The wine glass shattered against my grandmother's immaculate tablecloth, crimson liquid blooming like blood across pristine white linen. A strange metallic taste filled my mouth as the words hung in the air. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as 8 years of struggle suddenly made terrible sense. "Good thing your parents paid off those student loans, huh?" Grandma had said it so casually, crystal glass catching the Christmas lights as she raised a toast. But I'd never finished college. I dropped out sophomore year because I couldn't afford tuition. My father's fork clattered against fine china. My mother's face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. The silence around the table pressed against my ears, like I was underwater, everything distorted and wrong. "What loans?" I managed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. My uncle smirked from across the table, face flushed with expensive wine and cruel amusement. "Wasn't that your responsibility?" he asked, words dripping with condescension. But Grandma's expression had transformed from festive to thunderous. She turned sharp eyes toward my mother, voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I sent you $50,000 every year since Paige turned 18. My name is Paige. I'm 26 and a retail worker with 3 jobs. This is the story of how I reclaimed my stolen future from the people who were supposed to protect it." Mom's whisper cracked across the room. "Mom, please don't." But Grandma stood, regal and resolute, her dinner napkin dropping forgotten to the floor. "I want everyone to hear this," she announced, eyes boring into my parents. "They used that money to fund Vanessa's honeymoon in Paris and Oliver's new BMW." Then she looked directly at me, her voice gentling just slightly. "Not a dollar went to you." I didn't cry. I just nodded, the pieces finally clicking into place. The years of struggle while my siblings lived in luxury. The nights I'd work double shifts while they posted vacation photos. The constant whispers that I just wasn't trying hard enough. I stood, legs trembling, but voice steady, and said, "Thank you for finally telling me. I was never one of them anyway." As I walked away from that table of liars and stolen futures, the winter wind outside felt warmer than the air in that house. They thought they broke me, but all they did was wake me up. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the thin mattress in my studio apartment staring at the ceiling, the patterns of passing car headlights creating strange shadows that matched my churning thoughts. No tree, no gifts, just the hum of my mini fridge and the ache of betrayal pressing against my chest. $50,000 every year. For 8 years. $400,000 that could have saved me from dropping out. Money that could have prevented the 3 jobs, the skipped meals, the nights I rationed my asthma medication because I couldn't afford the refill. I thought back to the year I dropped out, how I'd told Mom I couldn't cover tuition after my financial aid fell through. She'd sighed and said, "Well, maybe college isn't for everyone." I remember the way she said it, like she was doing me a favor. I remembered coming home from a night shift at Waffle House to see Oliver revving that new BMW in the driveway, and Vanessa posting sunset photos from the Amalfi Coast with the hashtag number #newlywed bliss. I used to tell myself they earned it, that maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough, that maybe I was the failure. But now I saw the truth. They built a castle with my bones and handed the keys to someone else. The next day, I went to the public library, logged onto one of the old desktop computers, and started digging. I didn't have money. I didn't have connections. But I had something they never thought I'd find: clarity. I requested my student loan records, checked every grant, every financial transaction tied to my name, and there it was. A trust set up by Grandma when I was a baby, dispersed in annual installments starting the year I turned 18. Each marked for education, each routed through my parents, every dollar gone, reassigned, lied about. I printed everything, every receipt, every deposit, every withdrawal. Then I took a bus to Grandma's house. She opened the door in her housecoat, hair still in curlers. But when she saw the manila folder in my hand, she stepped aside wordlessly. I laid the pages out on her kitchen table, one by one. She didn't say a word, just sat there, eyes scanning, hands trembling. After a long pause, she looked up and said, "I trusted them." Then her voice broke. "They told me you were studying abroad in Switzerland." I laughed once, bitter and sharp. Closest I got to Switzerland was Googling what the Swiss flag looked like from my second job's break room. Her face turned to stone, and I knew in that moment, hell had no fury like a grandmother who realized her blood had betrayed her own blood. Grandma moved like a woman possessed. She slid the folder back toward me, got up, and walked to her bedroom without a word. I heard drawers opening, hangers clattering, a suitcase unzipping. When she came back out, she wasn't wearing curlers anymore, just a dark coat and a face that could slice through glass. "Come on," she said, "we're going to the bank." I almost laughed. "You don't have to." She cut me off. "They stole from you, lied to me, and misused a legal trust. That's fraud. Let's start there." At the bank, she didn't ask for a manager. She demanded the branch director. We sat in a glass-walled office while she laid out the papers one by one, her voice ice-cold and precise. The woman behind the desk blinked in shock. This is serious," she said. "Good," Grandma replied, "because I want it handled seriously. I want my money back, I want her future restored, and I want them held accountable." It was the first time in my life someone had stood up for me like that. They didn't file a police report that day. They filed two, one for breach of trust, one for fraudulent misrepresentation. But Grandma wasn't done. She called her estate lawyer, the same man who'd helped her set up the trust in the first place. By evening, we were sitting across from him in his office, him flipping through the documents, eyes narrowing. "They lied to a fiduciary body," he said. "This is more than theft. They rerouted designated educational funds. That's criminal misuse." Grandma just nodded. "Then let's burn it all down." It didn't feel real. 24 hours ago, I was invisible. Today, I was in a legal war room with an 80-year-old woman as my personal wrecking ball. That night, I went home to my apartment. The lights flickered as I turned the key. My coat smelled like frost and stale coffee. But for once, my heart didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a weapon. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Dark circles, chapped lips, but a fire in my eyes I hadn't seen since I was 17. They thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd keep scrubbing floors and smiling through broken teeth. But now they were about to learn. The daughter they buried in silence was the one walking back with thunder in her fists. By New Year's Day, everything had changed. My parents still didn't know. Not about the investigation, not about Grandma's signature on the bank's fraud statement, not about the financial records I'd uncovered, copied, and handed over to the lawyer. But they were about to. The lawyer advised us to wait until the formal notice was served, so they couldn't move assets or hide the paper trail. But Grandma, she didn't believe in silence. Not anymore. She invited them over for dinner, just like she did every January. But this time, I sat beside her, right at the head of the table. Dad walked in first, freezing when he saw me. Mom followed, wine already in hand like armor. Vanessa, freshly tanned from her winter Paris retreat, blew me a fake kiss. And Oliver gave me a smirk like he was still 13, and I was still the stupid sister who didn't matter. We all sat down. The table was full of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and tension so thick it made the gravy congeal. Grandma raised her glass. "To family," she said flatly, then added, "and to consequences." Dad chuckled. "That's dark." Grandma didn't smile. She reached under the table and handed them a thick envelope. Mom opened it first. I watched her face go pale, then red, then utterly blank. "That's," she stammered, "that's private." "No," Grandma said. "That's my money. That was her future, and that was your crime." Vanessa leaned over to look. "What is this?" I answered calmly. "It's every dollar Grandma ever gave them for my education, which they used for your wedding, Oliver's car, their vacations." Oliver laughed nervously. "Okay, but isn't it all the same pot?" "We're family." That was it. That one stupid sentence. Grandma stood. "You stole from her. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. I trusted you with her future, and you chose luxury over loyalty." Mom finally snapped. "We were just trying to do the best for all our children." "Stop." Grandma's voice cracked like a whip. "You never treated her like your child. You used her pain as funding for your favorites." The room was silent. Even the walls seemed to lean in. Then I stood slowly. I looked my mother in the eye and said, "You didn't just steal money. You stole time. Years I'll never get back. While you sipped champagne, I bled for rent." Grandma placed a hand on my shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I felt like someone saw me. Truly saw me. "I suggest you get a lawyer," Grandma said as she turned to leave. "And a conscience," I added. As we walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. They weren't family. They were strangers who spoke in gifts and lies, and soon the world would know it too. 2 weeks later, they were served. I was at work restocking a shelf of off-brand shampoo when my phone buzzed with a photo from Grandma. Mom on the front porch, face slack, arms crossed tight over her robe, while a county official handed her a manila envelope. The subject line on the document read, "Notice of Civil Investigation, Misappropriation of Trust Funds." I just stared at the screen. I thought I'd feel joy or some deep, soul-satisfying victory, but all I felt was quiet, like a storm had passed, and I was still here, standing. That night, I walked the 5 blocks home in the freezing dark, past the corner bakery I used to clean for minimum wage, and I let myself cry. Not because I was weak, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't pretending I was okay. Back at Grandma's house, the real work began. Depositions, bank statements, phone calls from lawyers who suddenly remembered my name. Grandma's lawyer dug deeper, and what he found made my stomach turn. Over 7 years, my parents had embezzled more than $350,000 from Grandma's fund, enough to buy my sister 2 honeymoons, to send my brother to private golf school, and to throw themselves 4 luxury cruises. The entire time, I was taking the night shift at a gas station, skipping meals, drinking tap water, and rationing my asthma inhaler, all while they smiled at holiday dinners like they hadn't gutted my future. Then came the press. Somehow, the story leaked. Retired school teacher exposes family in shocking financial betrayal. My coworkers started whispering. Customers gave me weird looks. One man asked, "You're the girl from the article, right? The one whose parents—" I didn't answer. I just scanned his toothpaste and said, "Have a nice night." But that moment stayed with me. Not because of what he said, but because I didn't flinch. For once, I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't hiding. They stole from me. They lied to my face. They robbed years of my life like they were picking fruit from a tree they thought I'd never climb back into. But here I was, still breathing, still rising. And this time, the world was finally watching. The girl they left behind wasn't just surviving now. She was about to win. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday. My mom called first, not to apologize, but to beg. Her voice cracked through the line like old glass. "Can you talk to Grandma, please? She's freezing our accounts. We can't access anything." I sat there staring at my cup of instant coffee like it was the only warmth I had left in this world, and I said, with the calmness of someone long past hurt, "You used my future to fund your vacations. You don't get to ask me for favors." She went silent, then whispered, "Period." But it was never personal. That made me laugh. Hollow. You stole my name, my chances, my education, and you gave them to people who never once lifted a finger. You made it very personal. She didn't call again. By Thursday, Vanessa and Oliver had both posted Instagram stories in black and white, quoting scripture about family loyalty and enduring storms. But nothing could spin what came next. A judge ordered an audit. Every gift, every transfer, every check Grandma had written was accounted for. It was undeniable. They'd taken it all. The BMW title was in my father's name, bought the same year Grandma sent $50,000 for my second semester. Receipts showed a $7,200 Parisian hotel booked just days after I emailed my parents that I dropped out. I begged them for help that week. They didn't even reply. Now the house was on the market, the BMW repossessed, Vanessa's credit cards declined, and Oliver, who once said I'd always be mediocre, was caught on camera screaming at a Starbucks barista when his app wouldn't load. Their world was cracking, and I was watching it from the safety of Grandma's living room, her hand wrapped gently around mine. She said, "You're going to be okay now." I didn't respond because okay wasn't the goal anymore. Freedom was. Not just from the debt or the lies, but from the need to ever prove my worth to people who couldn't even see it. The girl they left to drown had built herself a raft, and now she was learning to swim through fire. They weren't losing money. They were losing access to me, and that was the one currency they'd never get back. The morning of the hearing, I wore a black blazer I found at Goodwill and boots with worn soles. Vanessa showed up in pearls. Oliver wore sunglasses indoors like it was still some kind of joke. My mother's hands shook the whole time. And my father, he didn't even look at me. The courtroom smelled like cheap wood polish and nerves. Grandma sat beside me, spine straight, eyes forward. When the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a personal statement, my heart started pounding in my ears. I hadn't planned to speak, but I stood. Every step to the podium felt like walking across broken glass, but my voice didn't shake. I dropped out of college because I couldn't afford tuition. I worked 16-hour days. I ate rice and tap water. I missed doctor appointments because I couldn't pay the copay. I begged my parents for help and got silence. Meanwhile, they were using money that was meant for me to send my siblings on international vacations. I paused. They didn't just steal from me. They made me believe I wasn't worth saving, that I was a burden, that I was the reason things were hard. I turned to look at them. And I believed them. For years. My throat burned. But now I know the truth. They didn't fail to help me. They chose not to. I stepped back, each word echoing like thunder in that quiet chamber. The judge didn't speak for a long time, then finally. Restitution will be enforced. Accounts remain frozen. Assets liquidated, funds rerouted to the intended recipient. Ms. Jordan, my name, my full name. And it felt like I was hearing it for the first time in my life. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but all I remember is walking out of that building and breathing air that didn't belong to them anymore. Later that night, I took the long way home, past the campus I once dreamed of graduating from, and for the first time, I didn't feel bitter. I felt free. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. It looks like survival with receipts. It looks like peace without apology, and it sounds like your name being called in a courtroom. Not as a victim, but as the one who finally rose. They say silence is golden, but the silence after you've told the truth, that silence is justice. 3 months later, I walked into my new apartment. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, view of a gas station, but it was mine. Rent paid, utilities on, groceries stocked, and a check on my desk. The restitution cleared, $187,000. The court had ordered full restitution of the $400,000, but after liquidating their assets and accounting for legal fees, this was what remained. The judge had been clear. They would continue making payments until the full amount was recovered. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I sat with it for days, like it was a letter from a past version of me. The girl who cried under flickering fluorescent lights at her night shift job. The girl who watched her siblings live dreams bought with her stolen future. Now she had options. Now she had a name. Grandma came over every Sunday. She brought lemon bars and stories. And one afternoon she handed me a manila folder. Inside were college brochures. She said, "If you ever want to try again, I'll be your co-signer this time." I didn't cry. I just nodded, because we both knew this time it would be my choice. 2 weeks later, I submitted my application to finish my degree in accounting. I would start next semester, this time with my future securely in my own hands. My parents lost the house, moved into a rental an hour outside the city. Vanessa blocked me on every platform. Oliver tried to DM me once. I didn't open it. They can keep their silence. I've outgrown their noise. Sometimes I still hear my uncle's voice in my head. Wasn't that your responsibility? Yes, and I handled it with more grace than they ever deserved, because I didn't just take back what was stolen. I built something they couldn't touch, not with guilt, not with gossip, not with money. Freedom doesn't come with a bow. It comes wrapped in broken glass and long nights and scars you don't show anyone. But it's mine now. And when I walk past mirrors, I don't flinch anymore. I see a woman who was left behind and still made it out. Not bitter, just done. So if anyone ever asks how it ended, tell them. She walked out of the fire holding the ashes of everything they tried to bury her under, and she never looked back.